So, as you guys know, if you've watched any videos that are posted on this channel, I've been making multiple video series about each part of the three great powers of the One Piece world. We made a video about the Admirals to cover the Marine headquarters, we just finished the Four Emperors of the Sea series with the second part, and today we're here to finish the Seven Warlords of the Sea series with its second part. Last time we covered the original 7 warlords that were the members of the group at the very beginning of the story, and today we're here to cover any other character that's ever been a member of the group. Now you might think that that would mean that we'd only be covering characters that joined the organization after the time skip, but that isn't the case at all, as we've learned about a few characters that were once warlords in the past as well. This means that we'll unfortunately only be covering 5 characters in this video, as opposed to the 7 that we covered in the last one, but all 5 of these guys are just as interesting. I also find the 7 Warlords of the Sea to be so cool because there literally can never be any members of it again because of the fact that the organization got disbanded during the Reverie arc. This means that there's another video that can get made on this channel in the future since the Seraphims replaced them, but we're here today to talk about the 7 Warlords of the Sea, so let's get back to them. Blackbeard is a character that we've talked about a lot on this channel already, and there's a good reason for that. He's mysterious, has an insanely unique and powerful devil fruit, and he'll pretty clearly be one of the final bosses of the One Piece story with the way that Oda has been writing him and building him up. He's also got this master plan that we don't really know all that much about, but we do know that it involves him and his crew taking over the whole world, as we learned during the Egghead Island arc. Blackbeard wasn't a warlord for all that long, as he was really only one for a 1 saga span at the end of the pre-time skip material, and he even resigned before that saga was over. The way that Blackbeard became a warlord was also pretty different from the way that pirates usually become warlords, because it all started after the Alabasta arc and the defeat of Crocodile. This is because a meeting was held after Crocodile was defeated, and it was while a few warlords were at that meeting that one of Blackbeard's crewmates, Lafitte, crashed the meeting to suggest Blackbeard for the vacant spot. Now this wouldn't be the most insane thing in the world, it's just a meeting, but then you remember that this meeting took place in Marriagewa, and his infiltration becomes a lot more impressive. We had only really heard about Blackbeard from his destruction of Drum Island at this point, but it was clear that he's got some pretty insane people on his crew, especially if someone like Lafitte can sneak around like that. Now it's cool that Blackbeard's name just got suggested in such a powerful way, but that doesn't really change his standing, as Lafitte saying his name is the first time that a lot of people have even heard it. Now we already knew that he was a member of Whitebeard's crew that defected at this point, and that's why Ace was tracking him down, but Blackbeard hadn't yet made any kind of name for himself at this point in the story. Now it was pretty impressive that he was a long-standing member of the Whitebeard Pirates, and this was still the case, but we've come to learn that not drawing too much attention to himself was all a part of his plan all along. With that being said, he did need to make a name for himself if he wanted to become one of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, and his grand idea to do just that was to turn Luffy into the world government. He got this idea after learning that Luffy's bounty had reached 100 million berries by the end of the Jaya arc, but we know that he wasn't able to go through with it because his little raft got destroyed by the knock-up stream. That's why we had to wait until the post-Enies lobby arc to see him again, and wouldn't you know, he still had his mind on Luffy and planned to go to Water 7 to capture him. The only reason that he didn't is because this is when Ace finally tracked him down, and even though we asked Ace to join him instead of fight him, we knew that that wasn't gonna happen, especially after Blackbeard told him that he was about to go after Luffy. This is what led to the infamous fight between them, and I kinda knew that as soon as it was revealed that Blackbeard had a way to nullify Ace's devil fruit, that Ace probably wasn't gonna win this fight. Ace did put up a hell of a fight, because he isn't anything if he isn't tough, but eventually Ace would be defeated in the battle that would eventually become known as the Duel on Bonaro Island. And it was after this battle that Blackbeard handed Ace over to the world government, was then declared Crocodile's successor as a warlord of the sea, and Ace was imprisoned and impelled down. So this not only moved Blackbeard's plan along by allowing him to become a warlord, but it also moved his plan along because it sparked a war between the Marines and the Whitebeard pirates. Now Blackbeard may not have been a warlord by the end of the Marineford War, but that doesn't mean that he didn't use his warlord privileges to get more things that he wanted. He was of course there when the Marines called him in because of their impending war with Whitebeard, but he was really only there for the free dinner. He was only really there for the free dinner and to put his true plans into motion, as a few hours before Ace's execution was going to take place, him and his crew stole a Marine ship, killing all the Navy soldiers on board for good measure. They used this ship to sail over to Impel Down and viciously attacked anyone who tried to stop them from entering the prison. Once they were in there, they were pretty easily able to make their way through the place because of the riot that was currently taking place, and even got some help from the former warden Shiryu for good measure. There's even a point in this arc where he properly meets Luffy for the first time, and then decides that it's a good idea to rage bait him about his brother's pending execution. Now, I'm not delusional, and definitely believe that Luffy would have lost this fight if it were to continue, but these comments did earn Blackbeard a gear second punch right to the gut, which he definitely deserved. It was after this brief encounter that he continued to go deeper into the prison, because it would help him and his crew shake the whole world to its core, but that was until they ran into Magellan. Magellan is still a guy that's pretty overpowered even in the current day of the story in my opinion, so he pretty easily puts them down with his poison and goes back to pursuing Luffy and his crew. One of the only reasons that they survive here is because Shiryu comes in and gives them the antidote to the poison, and then decides to join Blackbeard's crew because he's been waiting for a man of Blackbeard's stature to join. It was after this that him and his crew finally got down to the secret 6th level of Impel Down, the whole reason that they were there in the first place. It's here where he invited anybody who wanted to be free again to join his crew, but there was one catch. The prisoners would have to kill each other in order to prove their strength to him, and only the sole survivors in each cell would gain their freedom. It's unknown just how many prisoners died as a result, but Blackbeard got 4 more recruits from this: San John Wolf, Evalo Pizarro, Vasco Shot, and Katarina Devon. And with that, the newly reinforced Blackbeard pirates left the prison and headed for Marineford, either not knowing or not caring that some of the other level 6 prisoners survived and slipped out of the prison. And it was as soon as Blackbeard showed up to Marineford late with his new crew that he resigned from the Warlords on the spot. He even decided to tell Sengoku that the only reason that he obtained the title of Warlord of the Sea was to gain the means to break into Impel Down and bolster the ranks of his crew, so this man really doesn't give a fuck. I mean, he also wants to take down the world government in his own separate way from the Revolutionary Army, and he used them to help him achieve that goal. I still don't think that we know his true plans, just like we don't know Luffy's true dream yet, but what I do know is that he used his standing in the 7 Warlords of the Sea to help him achieve them, so I think that that's pretty cool. Now, another person that I think that it's easy to forget was a member of the 7 Warlords of the Sea at one time is Trafalgar Law. He's honestly another character that just used his status as a warlord to further his own plans, the first being to get revenge on Doflamingo, and the second one being the takedown of Kaido. You see, Law was held responsible as the mastermind of an event known as the Rocky Port Incident, during which he sent the hearts of 100 pirates to the world government, leading him to acquiring the status of Warlord of the Sea. It was also this incident that caused significant damage to Rocky Port, and inadvertently helped Blackbeard usurp control of Hachinosu from Ochaku. It was also this event that helped brand Kobe as one of the heroes of the Marines, and I find it really interesting how all 3 of these characters are connected. As we know, Blackbeard got his hands on Kobe when he attacked Amazon Lily and Kobe sacrificed himself, and it was as the Blackbeard pirates were sailing away from Amazon Lily that they attacked Law and defeated him. It was from this defeat that they got their hands on some of the road poneglyphs, and how they came into possession of the real hero of the Navy, Garp, because he went out to try to save Kobe. Getting back to Law, the whole reason that he became a warlord was to put his plans into place, and this is proven by the fact that 1 month before the Straw Hats reunited, Law sent his entire crew to Zou in order to keep them safe. He then began a partnership with Caesar that was only possible because of his warlord status, and in exchange for that partnership and the ability to stay on Punk Hazard, he gave Caesar his heart. It was while he had his partnership with Caesar that he also granted legs to Brownbeard and a ton of other people who had also lost their ability to walk. Now, everything would have gone a lot smoother for Law if Smoker didn't appear on the island because he heard Luffy answer a distress call, as I swear that Smoker is one of the only Marines that actually tries to find justice and do his job correctly. If I'm being completely honest, it's pretty clear to me that Law just uses warlord status for the free immunity that he needed to put his massive plan into motion. It allowed him to form connections that he wouldn't have been able to form otherwise, and you simply can't take down one of the 4 emperors of the sea without a ton of planning. You can't do it without a ton of planning and picking up some unexpected allies along the way, and that's exactly what Law got in the form of Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates. As we know, the Straw Hat Pirates were integral not only in the defeat of Kaido, but also the destruction of the Smile Factory on Dressrosa and the defeat of Doflamingo in the same arc. With that being said, it's also because of the Straw Hat Pirates that Trafalgar Law is no longer a warlord. This is the case because in the middle of the Dressrosa arc, when things got really complicated because of the fact that Doflamingo is a celestial dragon, Fujitora learned that Law had formed an alliance with the Straw Hat Pirates. This of course disqualified Law from being a part of the group, so Fujitora stripped him of his title right then and there, but he couldn't do anything to Doflamingo's title because of his standing amongst the world's ruling class. Law's time as a warlord of the sea wasn't all that long in the grand scheme of things, but I'd say that it was pretty important to what he's already accomplished, even though his previous title won't really matter moving forward. Buggy is yet another character that I've already talked about quite a few times on this channel, but that only makes sense because of how important he is to the story and how genuinely fun his character is. It's pretty insane because we talked about him in the very first video on this channel where I talked about East Blue villains, and a recent video where I talked about the newest iteration of the 4 Emperors of the Sea. This guy went from a literal joke villain in the second arc of the entire series, all the way to one of the 4 most notorious pirates in the entire world, and his cowardly yet admirable character has pretty much stayed the same the entire time. We've talked about Buggy a few times on this channel already, but we've kind of just brushed past the fact that he was a warlord in those discussions, so we're really gonna focus on that today. So as we know, Buggy was the secret main character of the Marineford War to the regular citizens of the One Piece world, and that gained him quite a bit of attention from the world government. He not only grabbed that video snail and started vlogging with it, the world also learned some pretty insane information about him, like the fact that he was actually a member of Roger's crew back in the day. Now I'm pretty sure that we already knew that information at this point, but even if we didn't, learning this stuff about him makes it really easy to understand why he got so much of the world government's attention after the war. With that being said, we got to see just how much attention he gained during the post-war arc after he was finally able to reunite with his crew, introduce them to Mr. 3, and all of the powerful subordinates that he gained during the Impel Down arc. Buggy then showed his Captain John's treasure mark that he got from Luffy, and immediately afterwards, he received an invitation from the world government to become a warlord of the sea. It was pretty insane because they were able to figure out where he was pretty much as soon as the war was over, and I'd say that he actually used his warlord privileges pretty well. This is because Buggy accepted the invitation to join the 7 Warlords of the Sea, and used his newfound freedom to found a mercenary dispatch service called Buggy's Delivery. Now we didn't really learn this until we first saw it during the Zoe arc, but we've learned quite a bit about this bounty hunting service at this point, and it may not have been Buggy's best choice. This is because even though Crocodile wasn't the biggest fan of Buggy, he still decided to lend him the money that he needed in order to start his service, something that's going to come back in a big way by the end of this discussion. As I said, we don't even get to see Buggy's Delivery until the Zoe arc, and even though most of what we see of it is negative, that doesn't mean that Buggy's infamy didn't grow. After the Impel Down and Marineford arcs, Buggy gained new crew members that saw him as way better than he actually was, and that ill-found admiration only grows as time goes on. With that being said, Buggy first appeared after the time skip at Karai Island's Buggy District, celebrating Doflamingo's downfall, which was a great benefit to his business. However, he was enraged to hear from Moji that Hydroden and his crew had quit Buggy's Delivery because they were his most successful employees. Well, we all know that they quit in order to follow Luffy and join the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, but after resigning from Buggy's Delivery, Hydroden and his crew sailed away from Buggy's headquarters, leaving Buggy furious at their resignation and causing him to put all of their names on his deserter list. With that being said, even though his best employees left him, there's nothing to really suggest that Buggy's Delivery went majorly downhill after they left. This is because they're still operating at what seems to be 100% the next time we see them. The only problem with this is that the next time we see them is after the 7 Warlords of the Sea have been officially disbanded. Buggy, forever the coward, secretly planned on fleeing alone once telling his men to be prepared to fight when a marine fleet led by Stainless this, approached Karaibari Island to arrest Buggy after the abolition of the 7 Warlords system. Seeing Buggy still act this way despite the extra power that he now has really brings you back to a simpler time in the One Piece story, as it's nice to know that Buggy will always be Buggy. With that being said, he wasn't able to go through with his plans of escape, because as soon as he was about to run away, all of the attacking ships got destroyed, leading Buggy to wonder who his saviors were. When he found out that it was Crocodile, his subordinates believed the rumor of the latter being Buggy's henchmen to be true and that he came to save them, but that couldn't be further from the truth. This is because Buggy is terrified that it's Crocodile who's the one that's saving them, because he knows that Crocodile is only there to collect the money that Buggy owes him. He almost decided to let himself just get captured by the Marines because of this, but he didn't, and Crocodile was surprised that he didn't run away after he pretty quickly subdued him. Mentally admitting this, Buggy informed him that his organization wasn't doing as well as it seemed, given the large number of members that he had to feed, and that the Giants had quit. This is something that you never would have expected, given the way that Buggy had been acting, but his bravado and ability to put up a good face are a few of the reasons that he was able to climb the ranks of the One Piece world. With that being said, however, Crocodile replied that he could sell him into slavery if he didn't have enough money, to which Buggy tried to appease him by reminding him that they escaped Impel Down together. Now we all know how Buggy reacted, but in my opinion, if Buggy was sold into slavery, he would have had the ability to escape one way or another, whether it was his devil fruit or just charming people to somehow follow him, even though he's probably weaker than them. With that being said, that's not the option that Buggy chose, so Crocodile then told him to pay him back for their relationship, as he needed the funds to start a new company. Buggy then decided to work for him and thus settle his debt, offering him the service of his workers for free and the resources of advertising, printing, and transportation. This was the interaction that eventually led to the creation of the Cross Guild, as Mihawk was somewhere in the background as well, as him and Crocodile had recently formed a partnership. Now, even though we didn't get to see Buggy all that often while he was a Warlord of the Sea, he definitely used his time as one effectively, even though it did eventually lead him into the shitty situation that he finds himself in now. Even though Buggy keeps poking the bear when it comes to his time in the Cross Guild, he's still technically one of the leaders, and everybody except Mihawk and Crocodile will rally behind him. Buggy becoming a Warlord of the Sea feels like a necessary step in the place that he finds himself at the current day of the story, and watching as Buggy continuously fails upward is always fun. Edward Weevil, or Whitebeard Jr., is a pirate and self-proclaimed son of the late Edward Whitebeard Newgate. He's the son of Buckingham Stussy, the self-proclaimed lover of Edward Newgate. He was initiated into the 7 Warlords of the Sea sometime during the 2-year time skip, and served in their ranks until the Warlords' dissolution. Weevil was first mentioned by Marine Commodore Branu in a discussion of the, at time, current Warlord ranks to several high-ranking Marine officers, but was not explicitly named until Doflamingo's defeat. Weevil is one of the strangest characters in the entire One Piece story in my opinion, because even though it's clear that he's an important character, he kinda popped up out of nowhere, and we still don't really know anything about him. When he first appeared, it also seemed like his mother was just a crazy person that was trying to live off of Whitebeard's name, but it's clear from the God Valley flashback that the two of them were at least a little close back when Whitebeard was a member of the Rocks Pirates. Stussy is also a pretty confusing character at times because she was actually the model for Mad's first ever successful clone, which means that there's also a younger version of her running around in the world as well. Well, I don't know if running around in the world is the right thing to say about her after what happened to her during the Egghead Island arc, but she does exist and was a secret member of CP0. Even though Weevil hasn't made that many appearances in the story so far, he is pretty important, as during the time skip, he fought and destroyed 15 pirate crews that served under Whitebeard in order to claim Whitebeard's treasure that Stussy had promised him. And unfortunately for the pirate crews that were involved in them, all of these started as small arguments that turned into large conflicts. Also, unfortunately for them, whether Weevil is Whitebeard's actual son or not, he's pretty damn 100% powerful just like him, so they've lost all the fights that they've gotten into with him. During the Zoe arc, Weevil defeated AO's crew after a small argument like usual, and his mother told him that they must find Marco in order to claim the late Whitebeard's fortune, but Weevil was more interested in taking vengeance on Blackbeard for killing his alleged father. Something tells me that that wouldn't have gone well for the guy, since that fight most likely would have taken place off-screen, but both Weevil and Blackbeard are off-screen merchants if you really think about it. With that being said, he took the delusion to a whole nother level after his mother read him a newspaper where it was revealed that the Straw Hat Pirates defeated Doflamingo. After hearing this information, Weevil asked his mother whether or not he should chase after Luffy in order to get information about Marco. Not only was this a bad idea because he wanted to go after Marco, who he had no chance against, but especially because he wanted to go after Luffy, who actively would have put him on a t-shirt. I've always been one of the people that have believed that Weevil would have been handled by Marco if he ever made his way to him, but unfortunately for our guy, he never even made it to him. This is because after the Warlords got disbanded and Marco was away in Wano, Weevil arrived on Sphinx to defend it from the Marines that were attacking it. Weevil luckily defeated the squad's leader, Rattle, but once the Marines on the scene called for backup, it was Green Bull who answered the call. So yeah, our guy Weevil is strong, but he isn't that strong, so he was defeated by Green Bull and taken into Marine custody, where he's still at to this day. It would only make sense he was taken to Impel Down after his defeat, but with the ways that so many people have been thrown in there recently, and the fact that the final war has to be coming sometime soon, I can totally see a world where we see a free Weevil once again. And in all honesty, I wouldn't be upset if we did, because I do legitimately want to learn if this guy is actually Whitebeard's son, as it would actually make sense given his strength. With that being said, I'll also always be one of those people that'll never say that he could defeat Marco and get Whitebeard's treasure, as Marco is just way too strong to lose to somebody like Weevil. Hanafuda, also known as the King of Lizards, was a former warlord of the sea and affiliate of the Beast Pirates who was defeated by Portuguese D. Ace 4 years ago. Following his expulsion and eventual death at the hands of rival pirates, his warlord position was given to Bartholomew Kuma. This guy is also the father of both Ulti and Page 1, explaining how the two of them got their feet in the door at one of the most powerful pirate crews out there. It's actually pretty insane, because even though we learned that Ace turned out his invitation to join the 7 Warlords of the Sea quite a while ago, Hanafuda himself wasn't revealed until the SBS section of volume 109. This is the volume that has chapters 1101 through 1110 inside of it, and it wasn't even here that we learned his backstory, as we only got his design. With that being said, we learned more about him in the SBS section of volume 111, as a former member of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, Hanafuda was very powerful, capable of clashing with Kaido before forming an alliance with him. He was also a collector of Zoan-type devil fruits, particularly ancient Zoan types, as a hobby, and while it's unclear whether or not he was a devil fruit user himself, I'd say that based on his design, and the fact that his children both are, that he definitely was one as well. Unfortunately for this guy, since he was defeated about 2 years before the main story started, the two most interesting things about him are the fact that he was defeated by Ace, and the fact that Kuma took his spot in the 7 Warlords of the Sea. It was also pretty interesting that he was associated with the Beast Pirates, and the fact that both Ulti and Page 1 carried on his legacy is also pretty cool. The 7 Warlords of the Sea are a faction within the One Piece story that really allowed it to function once they were introduced during the Arlong Park arc. Not only were they integral to the story because of the fact that the Straw Hats have spent multiple arcs with the goal of taking just one of them down, every character that's ever been a member of the group has been interesting and worth talking about. Somehow, in a story that begins with Luffy's journey, Oda managed to make the Warlords a force that feels like they've been around forever, as yet another way that the world government tries to take control of every little aspect of the One Piece world. There's a reason that the Straw Hats have been taking these guys down since the very beginning, and there's a reason that a ton of characters called them crazy just for taking a few of them down. The 7 Warlords of the Sea have been used as yet another vessel to show us that the Straw Hats, and specifically Luffy himself, are fighting against the status quo of the One Piece world, and every fight that they've gotten into with them has been extremely compelling. It is unfortunate that the 7 Warlords of the Sea just don't exist anymore, but their disbandment was important for the progression of the One Piece story, and the Seraphims are definitely something that I can make a video on in the future. With that being said, I don't really have anything else left to say about the 7 Warlords of the Sea, so I think it's time to end things here. Please join me next time for whatever I post next. Please leave a like and maybe subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.